Well, guys, I've actually been kind of dreading this moment where I have to start working on the chassis for this Philco 471230. And why would I dread it, you might ask? Well, let me show you why. There's nothing wrong with this radio. It's perfectly good radio. You know, it's your standard Philco from the period. Nothing wrong with it that isn't wrong with every other one. But here's why I've been dreading it. It may not look like it from your perspective, but this is a very crowded radio and rather a challenge to work on, because Philco like to bury capacitors way down here, like basically inside the band switch, and down there in that FM chassis, and basically the whole tuner chassis. Meanwhile, you've got clockwork stuff going on. You've got little coils for the FM happening that you can't mess with. You've got exposed coils. These are tough radios, and they're tougher than they look because there are a lot of exposed and fragile parts. This is a transition time for Philco, and they were still using the Bakelite blocks. You know, they went ahead and parked the output transformer inside this thing. So, I mean, there's all kinds of, things going on in this that are just going to take a lot of time and a lot of patience to work around. So, I kind of say it facetiously a little bit that I've been dreading it. I really haven't. I like working on all radios, and I love a challenge as much as anybody. And this one will be a challenge. And so if anyone has a radio like this, don't fear, my friend. We'll get through it. And if you've got yours, why don't you dig it out, and we'll get through it together. This is an AM/FM shortwave radio, which I mentioned early on. And it was only in that period right after the war, from about 46 to about maybe 49 or 50, when you could buy a radio that still had shortwave but also had FM. That didn't last very long. Pretty much radio companies dispensed with shortwave by about 1950 or so. I think Magnavox was one of the last, that a lot of their radios still had shortwave in 48, 49, 50, but I think that was about it. These were actually really good performing radios, these Philcos, this chassis style. They're just compact. They're kind of like the small chassis Zeniths that are hard to work on. They're compact and they're tight, and you've got to have nimble fingers. But, thankfully they had gotten rid of most of that bad wiring that was plaguing the pre-war radios. And so at least on this radio, on this radio, there's not going to be a lot of cracked wire to deal with, so I won't have to worry about that. But boy, there are a lot of things going on in every tube. So that's going to be the challenge on this one. No cracked wire, but lots of busyness. And, I make it my habit to check every resistor, so that's going to take some time. First off, let's dig in by doing what I always do, and let's get rid of the fragile stuff, okay? When I say get rid of the fragile stuff, I mean I'm getting rid of buttons and knobs, for example. Now, this whole assembly here is going to need to come off, or at least come loose, because I'm going to pull this dial off, this dial backplate off of here. So I'll replace all these grommets, and let me show you why. They're actually quite flexible, more than I usually see them. But if you look down in there, you see they're cracking pretty bad. I'm not going to remove these buttons, but what I am going to remove are the tubes, and I want to clean those up. So let me go wet a towel, and I'll do what I always do. I'll clean them as I take them out. Some of these tubes on this Philco are loctals, and some of them are octal tubes. Now, what's the difference? Let me show you. Let me pull a loctal out. For those of you that are new to this period of radio, an octal tube is a tube that has 8 pin locations available on this base, and it has a key on it so that you can only put it in one way. And on most octal tubes, on a lot of octal tubes there will be 8 pins, but on some, only the pins that are connected will be there. So that's your basic octal tube. Loctal tubes, on the other hand, and by the way, an octal tube usually has like a Bakelite tube base like this here. I've seen some metal ones too, the early shielded ones where it's just shielded in the bottom part. Now here's a loctal. A loctal has a metal base. It does have a center pin like that is keyed, like you see right here. and the pins are smaller. They're both shorter and smaller in diameter. There are only 8 of them, so there's still 8 pins. But if you look at this, it's got kind of a funky shape to it. This is a detent, so that when you push it down into the tube, there's a spring clip in there that grabs a hold of this and holds it. This is great in portable radios, probably excellent in automotive applications, maybe even aviation stuff. And I'm sure that Philco had ideas to see this, go real far. But it lasted for a while, then the compact tubes came out, and these sort of disappeared right along with the octals. The problem with these loctals that you need to know about right away, you can't wipe these with water. That ink is usually water-based on a loctal tube, and includes the number that's up here on the top. So the way I do it is I wipe all the areas that I can get to, okay, that don't have print on them, but I don't wipe those areas that have print with water. I don't get them wet. Okay, now how do I get those clean? Well, while the rest of it is wet, I'll real quickly just sort of wipe over the printed areas, and that usually gets them clean enough to make them very presentable. The numbers are not printed darkly to begin with. If I wipe this anymore, those numbers will come right off. So I'm wiping it with a dry towel right now, just see what I can get that way. All right, so it's a 7x7. On the corner, right here on the corner behind the transformer, is the rectifier, which is a 5Y3. And those who have seen some of my older videos know this, that I clean my tubes up first rather than just before I test the radio, because by that stage in the game I'm usually eager to get it going. I don't like to be held up doing things like cleaning tubes. Okay, so this is a 5Y3. You can see this was owned by a smoker, because there's a lot of, looks like what comes from tobacco smoke. By the way, this lettering on the side too, especially the silver RCA lettering, will come right off with water also. Alright, this one right here next to the 5Y3 is a 6B6. That's an output tube. Tube radios with tubes you can't see into just takes away a lot of the fun of having a tube radio. You want to be able to see the tubes glowing. It's just part of the mystique, man. It's just cool. Let me wipe off the base real quick. The yellow Philco lettering will come off too, and it doesn't take much. Some radios you can wipe this stuff, but I never know which ones they are, so I'm real careful. I do know that Philcos always are able to come off with water. Alright, here's the other 6B6. This is a push-pull amplifier. I'm getting a tube tester shipped to me. Hopefully it'll arrive in the next few days, which once I calibrate it and make sure it's working right, I'll be able to make sure these tubes are matched. Boy, it's hard. I've never had them be so hard to clean, you kid. I don't want to take those numbers off though. There we go. 6B6. Okay, here's a 7AF7 sitting right next to the transformer, and it's a loctal. Sometimes dabbing it will get it a little cleaner, but you can't wipe it once you've dabbed it, because you'll wipe the numbers clean off while they're wet. You got to wipe them dry. You just can't wipe them wet. See, here's what happens. I didn't do this, but here's what happens. Those letters will come clean off. Okay, here's another loctal between these IF transformers. See, there's how you spell Loctal. L-O-K-T-A-L. See that? L-O-K-T-A-L. So during the summertime, Philco is closed on Saturdays, but as of Labor Day, they open on Saturday. And I meant to get over there today, but I haven't felt the greatest, and so I woke up late this morning. But I will start hitting Philco a little more on Saturdays. That's because it's tough for me to get away from work and get over there. And I like to take my time when I'm in there. Of course, that makes wifey cringe a little bit, because when I take more time in there, it means I spend more money. All right, 7R7. Okay, let's see, 7F8. If you dab it like this, you can get it pretty clean just by doing that. You see it coming cleaner? It's time consuming, but it really is nice when your tubes have all the numbers on them. I've heard people say that mineral oil will not take it off, but you know what? I tried mineral oil one time and it took letters clean off. Okay, we have a couple of compact tubes on here, or they call them miniature tubes. And this is a 7-pin mini. Usually on those I'll wipe off the top part first because there's usually not any print on there. So I probably ought to quit repeating myself, but I can't stress enough how you have to take it easy on this stuff. Now, a lot of these minis have the numbers etched in. I see it right there. If they're etched in, you know, like, I don't know how they did it, but if they're etched in, well, then they won't come off with water. Looks like a 6BA6. Last tube right here, 6AG5. Okay. Okay, all the tubes are off of here. I'm going to go ahead and remove these lamps. So I'll put those with the tubes. That's pretty much all on this top section. I'll wrap those tubes in a few minutes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have to be really careful. One of the earliest things I do on this radio is going to have to be to remove this. And there will be a bunch of wires here. Some of them I'll determinate, all right, and I'll number them, and I'll number the circuit board. Okay, that's probably what I'll do on these because they're easy to get to. Actually, most of these are easy to get to. That way I don't have to shorten the wires any. I don't have to splice the wires. They look better if you don't have to splice them. So I'll pull this whole assembly off. When I'm handling this thing, I don't want to be banging on this. Let me set up and get that started, and we'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, let's start labeling these wires so that we can go ahead and disconnect them here. I don't know where they go to, and I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to label them with numbers. I'll deal with all of that later. One of the things I do before I put it all back together is I go back and review the video and I check to see how it was assembled. When I did cars, boy, when I'd pull an engine or something, I'd have sometimes a couple hundred little tags all over the place indicating what each one was. And if you do it in sequence, we'll see, then it's a lot easier to remember how you took it apart too. If you go ahead and clean the areas you're going to number right now, well then when you're cleaning later, you don't have to clean the number that you put on there off. Alright, so that's something that, you know, if you're thinking ahead, that's a good thing to do. So I'm going to write the numbers right there on the board. Real easy. So I'll clip these back here where they won't be as visible. Let me go ahead and remove some of these wires. If you watch many of my videos, you know I like desoldering braid for this kind of work. I think it does a nicer job. I'm watching eBay today. I'm getting ready to bid on an ICO ST96 stereo tuner. This one's a parts tuner. I already got a good tuner that is on the way to me. It's already been mailed to me. But this one is relatively inexpensive and it'd be good to have the parts around. Last thing you want to do is break one of these terminals, so be real gentle with them. If you have to clip the wire, it's no big loss, but if you damage a terminal, it can be a real pain. Alright. I'll clean up the insulation there, no big deal. Even if I have to put a piece of heat shrink tubing there to make it look a little nicer, I can do that. Okay, this side is free. I'll hit the other side, and I can unbolt this and lift it off of there. These are easy to get to. That's good. Right there is a little choke. That's what that is. There's a wire there and a wire there. I'm going to take some liquid tape and I'm going to fasten these wires to that board, and I'm going to put some underneath that board when I remove it to try and hold this thing stable. I got this resistor sort of in the way too. Stand that up so it's not quite in the way. There we go. A lot of solder on this terminal looks kind of globbed on like it was some sort of repair. Yep, they got this wrapping around the outside of all the other components. I hope that component is correct. So number 8 here goes to the same place that this resistor goes to, and this little carbon comp goes to right here. There is also back there what looks like another resistor right there. It might be, yeah, I think it's a resistor anyway. Those 3 components, that one, and that thing that's under there, goes to this terminal right here. This plastic insulation is really fragile though. It melts really easily. It's not like some of the later stuff that didn't melt quite as easily. Alright, okay, that's number 9, right here on the left side of where that little choke deal goes. Okay, number 8 is the one that's still got several things wrapped on the terminal and they wrapped around it. Now we're going to get number 7 here, this blue wire, and it's sitting right here. It's like a common ground because there's a bus it's sitting on, and that's usually ground on these things. That terminal connects to a whole bunch of other terminals right next to it in a line. Try not to touch the plastic insulation with the desoldering braid while you're doing this, and you won't heat that insulation as much. Okay, that's number 7. So there we go. All of them are disconnected. I don't see any other wires going to it. I've got a ground strap back here that I've got to just remove, but that's just a screw. Let's go ahead and remove that screw. We'll do that first right here. That's just a 1/4 inch driver, no big deal. There's a grommet on it. We're going to leave that grommet. All we're going to do is disconnect that ground strap. Boy. Okay, maybe I'll use a 1/4 inch wrench. There we go. Thing hasn't been taken apart since 1947. Okay, got a screw about 1 inch long or so, maybe a little less than 1 inch. It holds this on. There we go. Alright, so it's going to be a similar situation on the rest of it. I've got these 2 screws right here, and that should loosen this whole preset and switch mechanism. So now we have this little deal here. It looks like it was part of this right here. I'll have to glue that back together. See if I can prevent that one from coming apart. I didn't realize that. It's just a piece of cardboard. Okay, great. Okay, this is just a little, I may have to make a new one of those. See if that's everything's loose. Yep. Okay, perfect. There we go. 1 station preset. I'm going to go ahead and put all the screws back in it so they don't get lost. And I'll leave the little remnant of that little cardboard deal in there as well. I think that's just to keep the light from shining through the buttons. It's not anything special. So I'll just make one out of cardstock and I'll paint it brown. This little ground strap here goes to this right hand preset tuner, right hand side of the button frame. Buster says hello. And I'll take this screw from the back side. You'll notice on the back of the preset mechanism are the frequency ranges for each of the presets that you want to kind of stay within. So these each have a limited range, and you need to make sure that when you're tuning these, you're picking a station that's within this little range here. These are like little bands, and then this forms a tank circuit. What you have is a slug tuned coil right here. Okay, that's this screw right here, and then you have a capacitor. So what you usually do is you tune into the station with this slug tuned right here, and then you peak it with the cap. You do it for every one. I'm going to go ahead and put this away where it won't get damaged. Because that dial string is in nice shape. There's no reason at all to to replace that dial string. It doesn't feel brittle at all. It feels very fresh. Well, there's nothing wrong with this dial arrangement and just leaving it on there, and I think that's what I'm going to do. Then I won't have to mess with any of the linkage or wrapping it or any of that. I'll just leave that be. If I have to take this power switch off, I'll do that. So that other was the phono switch up here. I remember that too. That's how a lot of the Philcos are. And this is the power switch. But some of them have the power switch on the push button assembly. It just depends on the radio. So I think I'll leave this on. Let me show you how these grommets go in here before I take them out. And then I'm going to go check on that stereo tuner. Let me zoom in a little bit. But here's how those grommets go in, okay? The skinny side, the skinny flange goes toward the back. The fat side goes toward the front, toward the dial. And then there's this flanged bushing that so many of them have, this little flanged bushing. It goes in from the front and goes toward the back. And the whole purpose of that bushing, as I've said before, is so that when you tighten this down to secure it, you don't squeeze down too much on that grommet. Because when you squeeze down on rubber too much, that will it will cause premature cracking. I'm going to go ahead and pull these out. Okay, there's one. There's two, because they'll get lost if I don't pull them out. I got to replace these grommets anyway. Here's three. This one's just a little bit stiff. It's got some wire or something in there. That's kind of weird. Some wire got wrapped around the grommet. I never saw that before. Huh, interesting. That's three. And here's four. Okay, there's four on the front. I've already got these. I own a whole bunch of these already. On this one in the back, the bushing goes in from the back side, and the flange faces, the skinny flange faces toward the front, toward the dial, okay? The reverse of these four. Go ahead and take that out, and then I'll put them all in a baggie. I'm going to leave this in place. I don't see any reason at all to remove this vertical mount, except maybe to help me clean down there. You know, maybe I will. That's easy enough to do. It doesn't take a lot of effort. I'll put it in the baggie with the rest of those grommets. Yikes. Where did that go? There it is. Okay, now I think I'm ready to flip this puppy over. Having this on here is probably going to be a good thing, because between that and the transformer, it will help me to stay off of these IF cans. These slug tuners, you know, for the slug tuned coils that are part of the IF transformers, these little deals here, the little threaded pieces that stick out, they're kind of fragile and they're very exposed. And so I want to not be setting this chassis on those. So it's probably good to keep this framework on here. And I'm glad I kind of came to that. So let me see here. I'll probably need a piece of wood under here. Damn spiders. I don't like spiders. They don't belong in the house. I'll leave them be outside, but I don't want them in the house. Okie dokie, guys. I've got this thing set up and ready to work. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and get started on the recap, and I'm not going to record every detail of that for you because it'll get really dull. So let's end this one right here, and next time you see this chassis, I'll probably have done a few caps, but we'll get rolling on it, and I'll explain any interesting stuff that I come across, okay? So from your Western Outpost in Salt Lake City, this is Michael. That's all for now.